We're in our final presentation. I would just like to introduce you to Catherine McAlpine from Everyone Can Work. Catherine's going to be, Catherine's the CEO of Inclusion Australia, and she's going to, she brings a deep experience of the disability sector through her leadership in the not-for-profit sector, advocacy, and her work over the last 15 years. And so with her work at Inclusion Australia, she's going to share some of her insights and some information. And so we're just going to load that up, and then Catherine will join us for some question and answer session at the end.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for inviting me to come along today. My name's Catherine and I'm talking mainly about school to work transition planning today. I'd like to start off by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation on whose land I'm joining you from today, and acknowledge the traditional custodians of lands across Australia on which we are all meeting, and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community. I pay my respects to elders past and present and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people in the webinar today. So today I'm sort of really, and again I'm happy to expand on either side of this, but concentrating mainly on high school students with an intellectual disability and their families who are interested in open employment. So I'm going to talk about some things that are helpful to know about good school to work transition planning, what it is, what works, how families can be involved, and the sorts of supports you can access for that. We'll look at the Everyone Can Work website, and I've got a little video about an open employment experience. So the Everyone Can Work website and the webinars that we developed as part of that, of which this is a tailored version, were developed by Inclusion Australia. And Inclusion Australia is the national peak organisation that represents people with intellectual disability and their families. And the project was funded by an NDIS ILC grant, and I'm guessing a lot of you will probably know that ILC stands for Information Linkages and Capacity Building, and aims to create inclusive communities. From our perspective, having a job in open employment is one of the important and best ways to help people with intellectual disability be truly included in our community. And I think you just saw that in the last presentation about how the employment sort of helps to lead on to a lot of other connections and relationships. On our websites, we have recordings of 4 webinars, a version of this one, and also one pitched at sort of the entering school age, so the things that you can do from a very young age, then sort of the year after school in terms of, you know, navigating to employment, and one for older people looking to head towards open employment, having maybe not having had any experience when they were younger. So one of the things that we know, and certainly I've got a, well, as you will see shortly, I've got a young adult son with Down syndrome. What we see is a lot of people with intellectual disability basically go straight from high school to an Australian Disability Enterprise or a day program. And there's a number of reasons why this happens. Part of it's low community expectations. It's all people can manage. You wouldn't really be able to do a real job. They're happy with their friends. That's the main thing. And so many people are put on the pathway even when they're still at school, such as only ever getting, you know, not ever getting any work experience in open employment. Another reason is lack of opportunities for casual work. So what we see for typically developing teens is that many of them learn about work, about having a casual job, you know, from the age of 15 onwards. So typical jobs such as fast food restaurants or shelf stacking at the supermarket, help people learn about work, being on time, clocking in and out, taking instruction, speaking to adults who are unfamiliar to them. And these skills make them more employable later on. But the thing that we know is most teenagers with intellectual disability do not get the same opportunities for casual work as their peers. Another thing's lack of planning. I certainly know that the years from sort of year 9 to year 12, you know, I don't know whether you found it, but sometimes at primary school it can feel a bit like Groundhog Day, you know, you think it's going to never end. But the years from year 9 to year 12 just seem to vanish fairly quickly. And so a lot of families of young people with intellectual disability talk about the experience of leaving school as sort of falling off a cliff. You know, one moment you've got a routine, you've got support, and the next moment, quite early in the year, so in about October, everyone else goes off to do their end of year exams and goes to SWATvac and all the rest of it. And suddenly for you, you're finished school, like it's done, just overnight. And suddenly you're on your own navigating the world of adult disability services. And that abrupt change can cause people to make pretty rushed decisions. You know, if you're like me and you're working, mums that are working, you know, you need to find a solution really quickly. The traditional employment services, so DES, Disability Employment Services, which is not part of the NDIS, it's a Commonwealth funded program. And in fact, I think we just saw in the last one that WISE Employment Supports was mentioned. So that would be a DES, a Disability Employment Service. They have eligibility thresholds that many school leavers with intellectual disability may not meet. You have to have an 8-hour-a-week job to get it. And so it doesn't really support people building up their hours, which might be best practice for people with intellectual disability. It's hard to find information about open employment and how to navigate the different employment support systems. And then there's also concerns about losing the DSP. And there can be many understandings about the impact of earning a wage on the DSP. And a lot of people who work in ADEs are told that it's better to earn something that doesn't interfere with their DSP. But in fact, the DSP rules let people with intellectual disability work up to 29 hours a week without losing a payment. And at the moment, the threshold changes every year or, you know, periodically. But at the moment, for every dollar that a person earns over $178 a week, they lose 50 cents of their DSP. So it means you're always, for every dollar, you're 50 cents better. So it helps bring in more income, which clearly helps for a more independent life. So working always means, even though it does seem a bit of unfair, working always means that people do earn more. But of course, all of this has made it much harder for people with intellectual disability to choose a pathway to open employment. And so one of the reasons we developed the Everyone Can Work website was to bring together all the information you need about work options and find the support that you need. And there's been some changes to those supports, particularly NDIS support in the last, well, probably coming up 12 months now, but things that are useful to know. Jared, I'm ready for the video.
My name is
when you get through to the link, it might not go to the video directly.
I am 90.
But if you could choose film 2.
It's old.
My name's Catherine McAlpine, and I'm the proud mother of 3 young men, and my middle son is Julian.
My name is Julian McAlpine. I am 90. It's old.
My name's Catherine McAlpine, and I'm the proud mother of 3 young men, and my middle son is Julian.
With a new house, I get new family, I'll be working. Sophie is my wife.
What do we got to do before you get married?
Possibly get a job first.
I'm Tara Elif and I'm 33 years old.
My name's Margot and I'm Tara's mother.
I work at the Ombudsman's office. I do filing, organise meeting rooms, fill up with copiers and a lot more.
That's my girlfriend now.
We were really keen for Julian to have the same opportunities as his brothers, and the evidence is really clear that for people with intellectual disability, that lots of work experience really helps. People at the end of school fall off a cliff, is how families describe it. It's at one moment they're at school and they're doing all the things that you do at school, and the next moment there is literally nothing. There is only the bedroom and the TV, you know. There is really nothing to do. I saw some mothers stop working around that time, or I saw that people made decisions very, very quickly. Oh, we'll just go into the day program for a little while. We'll just do this thing for a little while we try and figure it out. But in between it being very difficult to navigate all the systems that you have to navigate to get to open employment, people sort of lose the motivation to keep going towards employment, and we didn't want that to happen to us.
We thought that work experience was pretty important so that she actually found what it was that she wanted to do in her life, because having a job that you enjoy is probably the most important thing.
During high school, in year 9 to year 12, I did work experience. It's all different kinds of them. I did office. 2 of them were office and 2 were retail shops.
We had a really great careers advisor who phoned around all the local organisations that Julian showed interest at working at. He made sure that he found work experience placements for him.
I was working Big W. I was McDonald's, and I was working Bunnings and hairdresser.
You worked in a hairdresser? Where else did you work?
Childcare for little kids.
I'm very pleased to have the NDIS now, but we still find ourselves navigating between the Disability Employment Service, the NDIS, the DSP, and we had to navigate through the school as well, because it was us that suggested to the school that in year 11 and 12 he does 1 day a week work experience.
I work in canteen on the running basketball stadium.
Julian's older brother and younger brother were playing basketball, and then he said to me one day, "When am I playing basketball?" Basketball turned out to be really important because he could play basketball in the playground with the other boys and girls. He was accepted to be part of the basketball community at the school. I approached the manager, the Untitled Basketball Stadium. I went and asked her whether or not they might be prepared for Julian to do work experience, and then when he was productive, that would turn into a real job. Eventually, he got good at it.
Making coffee, and I was serving customers, and I was frying like my favorite hot chips. Makes me feel happy and proud.
The NDIS is very important to improve Tara's skills for the workplace. She has been doing training in Speak Up program and disability awareness. We currently use some of the NDIS funding for speech therapy.
He has a specialist support worker who has a teaching background, does quite a lot of work with him in terms of giving change. So we were able to use some NDIS money to do some stuff at home about giving change and about serving that we could then translate straight away into his job at the canteen.
I think the top priorities for young families to consider would be definitely travel training. Being able to catch public transport is very important. I'd say the second most important thing is to build that independence and the confidence in your person with a disability, because they've got to try things, and it's all right if they fail, it's all right if they stumble. Like the rest of us, they can pick themselves up and keep going.
You are allowed to have high expectations, and you are allowed to know the thing that your person can do, and you're allowed to build on those strengths
And don't let anyone else tell you that they can't do the things that you know deep in your heart that they actually can. And those things include being in charge of their own life, making their own decisions, and working. Who's in charge of your life?
Myself.
You are in charge of your life.
And so that's our story and the story of Tara and some other people who have had some experience transitioning to work. So one of the things I did want to just check is that everyone understands what I mean by open employment. And so we're talking about employment that's, you know, open to everyone, where people with disability and without disability work together. It's the same job market that we're all in, that everyone's in. Either as an employee or as to set up your own business to earn an income. And of course, everyone has the right to work with open employment, but NDIS data that shows only about 15% of people with intellectual disability work in open employment. And why is open employment important? It's, you know, researchers have talked with people with intellectual disability and their families about their employment experiences. And they found that people have a better quality of life, improved physical and mental health when they work in open employment, even when it's only for a few hours per week. And it's because earning a fair wage leads to a better standing of living and a lower risk of poverty. People feel more important and valued due to learning and using skills, and it improves how other people see them. Working in open employment means meeting more people, making more friends, more social opportunities. Working in open employment tends to lead to greater independence, and people tend to work longer in open employment and have a fuller life with more purpose and meaning. Next slide. So when we look at school to work transition, there are things that the evidence shows quite strongly that work. And one of the things, as everyone would know who's got a family member with a disability, is that the research shows that families play a vital role in helping their children keep and find work in open employment. So this is what the research says. Firstly, have high expectations. Parents who expect their sons and daughters to work in open employment, and young people who expect to be a worker in a regular job will have greater success. And this goes from anything, you know, in the webinar for young people, we talk about that when the kids are play acting when they're young, it's even things like make sure they're the shopkeeper and not just the customer. Make sure they're the doctor or the nurse and not just the patient. So they see themselves in working roles. Be involved. Family involvement in school to work transition leads to greater success, such as involvement in transition planning, helping to find work experience and part-time or casual work. Start early. Transition planning and activities such as work experience are best if they happen from the age of 15, so the legal working age. Transition shouldn't be left till year 12. It just comes on you too quickly. Starting early gives young people time to build their skills, aspirations and confidence, and parents feel more knowledgeable and confident about life after school. School to work transition plan. Now, I have to say that we didn't quite have this, but it's best if schools have a written individualised plan that sets out a structured transition process. And it should include transition goals such as getting a job, activities and support. And the student and the family should be part of the transition planning team, along with the relevant school staff who know the student well, and come together at agreed times to review how things are going. And the other thing is on-the-job learning, work experience and casual jobs. Young people with intellectual disability learn work skills best in the workplace. The evidence shows that actually learning in a classroom or learning in a group you don't transfer the learning into the workplace the way that some of us might have done when we went to university and then started jobs after that. That for people with intellectual disability, it's better to learn on the job. Now, schools provide a small amount of work experience, but the research shows that a significant amount of experiences will increase this chance of success in open employment after leaving school. And these include extra work experience. So my son's case, we negotiated with the school to do 1 day work experience all the way through 11 and 12, years 11 and 12. So what we did was to negotiate with the school and try and get like a term of work experience. So he did either 7 or 8 different work experiences during 11 and 12. So by the time he finished school, we'd started to really be able to gather what things he really liked, what things he didn't like, what had gone well, not so well. And that the evidence does suggest that a significant amount of work experience will increase the chance of success in open employment after leaving school. Next slide. So the supports for the school to work transition, and this is where the NDIS comes in. So until quite recently, school leavers with intellectual disability mainly use their NDIS plans to work in an ADE or go to a day program. But some recent changes have made it a little bit, hopefully, more flexible for people with intellectual disability to have a go at open employment. So the NDIS supports include school leaver employment supports, which is a chunk of money. It's a block money, not an hourly rate. But the only thing about that is it doesn't kick in until halfway through year 12. So you can't use that for any of that earlier work planning. But NDIS employment support can now be used to help participants of legal working age, including students including students that are starting the school to work transition, to find and keep open employment. So that could be as an employee, self-employed, or a family business. And that's really important. When my son was 15, he wasn't in the NDIS, and we had to self-fund some supports in that little part-time job that he had. And then we later on got some work we got a bit of support from the Ticket to Work program. But these days you can use your NDIS supports, and you can ask for supports in your plan to help with casual work or work experience along the way. NDIS funding in addition, so one of the things that's hard to manage, and I don't have enough time to sort of go into a lot of detail, but if you've got questions, I can go through them, is navigating the school NDIS interface in terms of, you probably know that one of the rules about the NDIS is that supports must be reasonable and necessary. And one of the reasonable and necessary rules is that they can't be reasonably be provided by another system, i.e. the school system, the education system is supposed to be inclusive and provide appropriate supports for children, for students. Now, the thing is, for young people with intellectual disability, for example, you would expect other 15 and 16-year-olds who go to work experience to be able to get themselves there and back on public transport by themselves. And you'll all know that this is much less likely to be true for a student with intellectual disability. So getting to and from work experience is an additional thing, and the NDIA accepts that would be a reasonable thing to use the funding. There's a little less, it's not as clear cut with support at the work experience itself. Frankly, I think you should be able to use your NDIS plan to do that, but that's not so clear. You've got to be careful of the boundary there. But you might also be able to use the funding to get a casual or a part-time job outside school hours. You can use the funding to support skills development during work experience or part-time jobs. You could use it to help young people work out and explore what they are interested in and would like to do. And often, I remember a friend of mine, her daughter had a work experience, and at the end of it, the daughter said, "I hated it." And her mum was sort of like, "Oh no, that was so terrible." And I said to her, "No, that's good. It's good. Now you know what she really doesn't like. Like, it really, the work experience, you want to find out what does and doesn't work, and finding out very strongly what doesn't work is part of what work experience is about. You can use the funding to help develop a resume or a portfolio, and to support the student and family at transition team meetings. And at the moment, you do need an employment related goal in your NDIS plan to get those sort of funding. I don't know what will happen if independent assessments come in. It's one of the reasons that that's problematic. But certainly at the moment, if you have a goal of employment, then you can get employment supports in your plan. Next slide. So there's a whole lot of things that you can do now. You can hold similar expectations for your young person with disability as you do for any other children. You can talk positively. You know, one of the things, if we always talk, I know I can come home after a hard day and be very tired. It's important to talk positively about work and about working. Important to make the link between having a job and earning an income. That's a really critical thing. You know, a lot of us, I'm lucky to work in a job that I love, although it is long hours. But also one of the reasons I work is for the income, of course. You know, I wouldn't be able to afford to work this many hours and not get paid. So the same goes for everyone else. And it's really important to explicitly make that link, that if you work, that's where the money comes from. I had a fascinating conversation with my son a few years ago where I was like, what pay, you know, where do, you know, how do we pay for things? And he's like, the money. And I'm like, where does the money come from? And he was like, the bank, like the machine, the ATM. And I was like, and how does the money get into the ATM? And he was, I don't know. I was like, well, when mum and dad work, the boss puts the money in the bank and then we can get the money out. And so making that link is really important. Because I don't know how many other people you know, but I know a whole lot of young people without intellectual disability who, when they're 16 and 17, decide how they're going to drive a Porsche and live in a penthouse and all the rest of it, and they haven't quite connected the dots that the money's not coming from the bank of mum and dad, but will actually have to come from them working, and that's where you get your income. So ask them what jobs, you know, ask them about jobs they might like to do when they leave school. Encourage their interests, get to know what they enjoy and what they're good at, you know, encourage fitness and hygiene and adhering to social norms. Hold them accountable to family expectations around the household, including chores. Teach them resilience by giving them opportunities to experience and overcome failure. And one of the things that's really hard is be prepared to think about your network strategically. You know, what classic first jobs do you know in your neighbourhood? The only reason that I knew about the job at the basketball stadium canteen is my kids all played basketball and I was treasurer for the basketball club. And, you know, I'd never thought, oh, that means. But when they advertised the job for the canteen, I was like, oh, my word, that's a classic first job. They didn't require previous experience. It's like, that's the moment to go. And then if it's part of a network you're in, then you have people you can talk to, you know, because it's a network. Do you already know people who run or work for an appropriate business? So at one point there was a parent in another basketball team that we knew who was involved in a pizza chain and had said to me, maybe I could find him something there. Do some local businesses already know your son or daughter? So for example, one of my son's work experiences was at the hairdresser he's been going to since he was a child. I asked them, could he come? And he was able to have a go at that for 1 day a week for a term. Be brave and ask about opportunities. That's really hard. And it's one of the things you can use NDIS support. You can get someone else to do the asking for you. And there's a tip sheet on the Every Australian Counts, on the Everyone Can Work website. And use your supports. Reach out to family, friends and peer networks, because you're all here today. It's a really, peer support is such an important thing, and certainly I haven't got through our journey to date without the support of peers that I've known ever since Julian was a baby. Next slide. And if I can just give a shout out to about the Everyone Can Work website. So that's www.everyonecanwork.org.au. And that's got a whole lot of information for people with intellectual disability and their families at different ages and stages. So whether you're just starting out thinking about employment, or you're preparing to transition from school, or you're school leavers, has information for supporters such as support staff, teachers and employers. And on the website, there's practical information at each stage, some research and some data about open employment, some real life stories, and some easy read materials to talk through with your family member with intellectual disability. Plus we've got videos and plain language and easy, I just said easy read. Next slide. When you go to the website, you can click on the tabs or boxes that apply to you on the, and just do your normal navigation around a website, or you can use the widget we have there about My Employment Pathway, and that gets you you can answer questions along the way, and then it will offer you some of the articles that are on the site that are most likely to most relevant for you. So you could tick that you're a parent, you could tick the age of your loved one with intellectual disability, and then you get offered and something about the age range, and then you'll get offered some articles. So that can be helpful. And next slide, please. And we even have A to Z of open employment. And so that's in the resources, and it's called the A to Z of open employment. And there's a whole lot of terms. So there's a whole lot of stuff about disability, disability employment services, a whole lot of stuff about the DSP, disability support pension, and the interface with employment. There's some stuff about school and the interface with the NDIS and stuff about the NDIS, of course. But all of it is there from a parental perspective of how do you navigate the systems and what things might help at what ages. And then up to the last slide. So I want to thank you very much for inviting me and welcoming me today.
Fantastic. Thanks, Catherine. That was really informative, and I love the fact that it's from a parental perspective. You know, totally agree that everyone can work. And you know, having been around adults with a disability for most of my working life, and no matter what setting I found adults in, they referred to where they were as work, not school, not day program, but I'm coming to work. And so, you know, I think it's up to us to tailor that experience to be as work-like as possible, whatever choices families and individuals make. So thanks so much. Thanks very much for all of the resources that Inclusion Australia has and it has on offer. And we've heard throughout the day how important getting support is for your cause, your issue, your information, and encouraging people to not go it alone, that people do need to find the support to achieve the goals that they want to achieve. And I think we've heard that time and time again and again from you today. So thanks so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Heather, do we have any questions?
We do have just one. I love the idea of a written transition plan live document from Year 9. It would be great to see an example of one if possible. It should be a component of every school curriculum. Is there an example of that on the Everyone Can Work website, Catherine?
I don't think we have an actual, because they're very individualised. So there are two things. One is to have a plan to say that you want to do these things, and really it's just writing down. So we, you know, I put together it was a 3-pager that said, you know, we want to do the Year 10 cooking class, because you couldn't do that in Year 11 or 12. So they stayed in the Year 10 cooking class, and they did some other literacy and numeracy, and then he did work experience and he went to TAFE, and we just wrote all that down. So that would be the plan. The other thing that we did do was to put together a portfolio of, rather than do a CV, that as he did all of his activities, this probably won't work, but just in case it does. But as he did the activities, he, you know, when you got the feedback, every time you got a feedback, so they put together this folio, and so at the end of school they wrote down all of the skills that he had. So like his literacy, you know, what was his literacy like, and what was his financial literacy like, and then it has any certificates. So he didn't manage. I mentioned he was at TAFE. He didn't pass everything, but it showed that he participated in the certificate 3, and it showed which units that he passed. And then it has, I flicked through them too quickly, I think, but it has reports, all that work experience he did. You know, there are feedback forms that the employer does, and put them in as well. So now when he's looking for jobs, he's got a whole portfolio. So it's not quite the same as what you asked, which yeah, I didn't ever get a template for it. I just wrote it up in a table and made it up myself.
But it's still good tips, you know, to think about reports, anything that you've got that's going to assist your child to getting a job. Let's put in a folder, and then we can work from there, and, you know, even derive your resume from there. And we had Maria Carvin talking about her son Jared at TAFE earlier, and talking about how he's learning how to write a resume at TAFE. So, you know, it's all good options for people getting those work skills together and giving them the best chance they have of finding that job.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yes, and Julian did a bit of writing a resume, but the resume that he writes didn't have some of the details. So it does sort of, and also photos from work. So like we have a whole series of photos that shows that he knows how to make coffee properly. So, you know, sort of just demonstrating that sort of helps increase the employee confidence that really he can do, you know, has skills that are useful.
And people are being creative with their resumes these days. They're actually sending in videos. This is me. They're doing presentations. You know, I think it's changed from when we wrote our resumes to get a full, you know, the first job. And even I know some of the resumes I get for volunteers at SWAN, I think, wow, God, they're so different. I've really got to update my resume because they're more creative, you know. So it changes all the time. So there's nothing wrong with presenting information in a different way. And it demonstrates the skills that your child can do.
Oh, yes, I agree completely. And the other thing is that we've found, so, you know, that video looks very positive, but because of COVID, the transition to employment for us has not gone as smoothly as we would have liked. And so self-employment and micro-enterprise are a real option as well. And I'm you know, I know that we have a story on our website about micro-enterprise, and I think for a lot of people, that's a thing to consider as well. And again, that still helps with some resilience and the very important thing of a bit more income, because otherwise how can you live, you know, a more independent life in the community if you don't have enough income to pay the rent?
Exactly.
All right.
Thanks.
I'm sure we could talk for all afternoon on it, but you know, we have promised people we'll finish by 3 minutes ago. So again, thanks, Catherine, and I'm sure people will be in touch and you will have lots of web hits over the next little while.
Thank you.
So thanks very much, and go well for the rest of the evening before your week starts again.